Welcome to the start of a new series I'm calling Roxie's Ramblings. If you're at all familiar with the Nintendo YouTube space, then you're probably aware of the phenomenon of big channels with methodical scripted content, such as Scott the Woz and Arlo, creating secondary topic channels dedicated to topical news that would take too long to write a full-fledged script about, or miscellaneous topics that wouldn't generate much buzz for the main channel. This series has a similar goal in mind, to bridge the gap between episodes of RoxieProxy and cover a broader variety of topics by way of a more casual, less time-consuming video format. Today's topic will be the Mario series' Nintendo Switch 2 Edition re-releases. But first, I wanted to quickly give my thoughts on the Switch 2 itself, seeing as how I haven't discussed it on this channel since complaining about its price shortly before launch. In retrospect, it was silly to expect the Switch 2 to be only $50 more than the OLED at its original MSRP, and I kind of regret jumping on the hate bandwagon simply because I didn't want to appear biased. That was kind of silly of me because every video game opinion is going to be biased. In May of 2025, you could buy a physical PS5 with Astrobot for the same price as a pre-order for a standalone Switch 2, but less than a year later, the PlayStation has undergone 2 price increases, making the digital-only model $100 more than a Switch 2 and a game. You don't have to agree with the $450 price tag, but it can't be denied that Nintendo's gone to great lengths to keep it at that price, going so far as to sue the US government to fight back against the effects of tariffs and AI-driven RAM shortages. Anyways, I adore my Switch 2, and its similarities to the Nintendo Switch, and its lack of a generational title like a 3D Mario, don't change that for me. I mocked the idea of a Switch Pro when it was being rumored about 5 years ago, but the Switch 2 has been transformative for my existing game collection. As one of the biggest Mario fans I know IRL, I'm not particularly fiending for a new 3D Mario, when I could replay Galaxy 1 and 2, 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, and Odyssey at the highest quality they've ever been officially available. That's not to say the Switch 2 library is lacking, as nearly every Nintendo published AAA exclusive has had a major twist or development, like You Know Who in Bonanza, or the actions of Galactic Nova in Air Riders, that's created engaging conversations within their respective communities. Then you have the dedicated paid upgrades for existing Nintendo published Switch games, which thus far have been a major mixed bag. Some of them are genuinely good deals, like the Kirby and the Forgotten Land update that bundles game-changing fidelity improvements with a DLC campaign that would have warranted its own $20 expansion on Switch 1. Or the reasonably priced New Horizons upgrade that offers improved resolution and quality of life improvements accompanied by a massive free upgrade for Switch 1 and Switch 2 owners. But on the other hand, you have offerings like Tears of the Kingdom, an already controversially priced game with a $10 upgrade that does little more to improve the game than raising the framerate cap to 60, and Xenoblade Chronicles X with an upgrade so bad that fans have opted to uninstall and, allegedly, refund it because the improved framerate doesn't make up for the muddled image. Not that some upgrades focusing solely on fidelity is inherently a bad thing, but in an era where gaming is historically the most expensive it's ever been, and entire indie games are less expensive than a framerate boost, many people are expecting Nintendo to either charge less for old games or to do more with them. That's where Mario's Switch 2 editions come in. Jamboree TV for Super Mario Party Jamboree, and Meetup in Bellabel Park for Super Mario Bros. Wonder are the only Nintendo-developed Switch 2 edition upgrades to offer major console-exclusive content in their respective paid upgrade paths. I've already made an episode of RoxieProxy dedicated to the shortcomings of the former, although I've come to realize over the past year that this video doesn't reflect the level of care and quality control that I typically strive for. As one of my more recent uploads, I wouldn't call it the worst video I've ever produced, but many of the claims I made in that video are inflammatory or exaggerated in a way that came across as clickbaity, and for that reason, I've decided to retroactively label it as a part of Roxie's Ramblings. See the posts tab on my channel if you want a more detailed explanation for why this video doesn't meet the standards of the RoxieProxy series. but all you need to know for this video is that I've since played Jamboree TV with an open mind, because I wanted to verify whether my first impressions were correct. The first thing you need to know about Super Mario Party Jamboree Nintendo Switch 2 Edition plus Jamboree TV is that its overly convoluted title is functionally a lie. On the title screen, you're given the option to boot into Jamboree TV, a Switch 2 game with a handful of exclusive modes, in addition to the base game's Mario Party mode and roughly 63% of its original minigame selection. Or you can boot into Super Mario Party Jamboree, the unaltered Switch 1 game. The decision to label this product a Nintendo Switch 2 Edition, even if it was only for consistency with the rest of the upgrade packs, is borderline false advertising. However, for the sake of argument, let's pretend that Jamboree TV was properly marketed as an expansion pass rather than an upgrade. Yeah, Jamboree TV is fine. There are 4 new modes in this expansion: Bowser Live, Carnival Coaster, an upgraded version of Mario Party, and Game Share. Bowser Live is definitely intended as the main draw of this expansion, but I'm too old for this kind of thing, to put it lightly. There are 3 minigames that utilize a compatible camera accessory, and 3 minigames that utilize the built-in microphone for those who don't have a camera. Once you've played Bowser Live twice, you've seen literally everything the mode has to offer, and the novelty of being in Super Mario in real life wears off. If my younger relatives visited more often, then I'm sure they'd love if I pulled out this game for them, but the only value I've gotten out of this mode is like 15 minutes of ironic enjoyment with my adolescent siblings and adult friends. Carnival Coaster, on the other hand, is a mode that's so good that I regret not covering it in my initial Jamboree TV video. On the surface, a family-friendly on-rail shooter seems like a filler mode, but think about it this way: it's an on-rail shooter with mouse support on console. Though this mode is less involved than River Survival in the original Super Mario Party, I do appreciate having a similar co-op experience in Jamboree, and its mouse-based gameplay shows the potential that modern arcade shooters have for Switch 2 ports. The first 3 areas are a tad bit repetitive, but the inclusion of 20 mouse control minigames helps to break up the monotony. Plus, the other 2 variants help to spice things up. You have Haunted Coaster, which is designed like a maze, and Trial Coaster, which has the players racing against Imposter Bowser by performing well in a gauntlet of minigames. I haven't been able to convince other people to play this with me, but even as a solo experience, its inclusion is a net positive that helps to round out the Jamboree lineup. Although Mario Party is practically unchanged outside of the resolution bump, the game mode does receive some minor additions that make it the best classic Mario Party experience by default. As I said in my past video, the added camera support makes it easier to see the reactions of other players in a couch co-op environment, where everyone is typically looking straight ahead at the screen. For some reason, Pro Rules are absent from Jamboree TV, but in its place are 2 new rule sets: Tag Team and Frenzy. The former is nice to have if one of the players is young or unfamiliar with games, and it's nice to see 2v2 mode return in a way that doesn't necessitate the awkward tile-based movement system of the 3DS entries. And the latter has a much faster and arguably better pace than the typical rule set, reducing the turn count to 5 and starting the game off with 2 homestretch events and a plethora of useful items. While not quite an overhaul, Jamboree TV is now my go-to for a round of Mario Party. Unfortunately, there's no saving grace for this game's game share implementation. Without the option for game share via game chat, the only alternatives for an online 4-player Jamboree gathering are $60 Switch 1 copies for everyone, or $80 Switch 2 copies for everyone. And the local game share mode only offers 1 board, 30 minigames, and the default rule set, compared to other party games on Switch 2 that support nearly all modes and settings over game share. And sure, local game share might be a bit redundant, given the existence of tabletop and docked modes, but it's the principle of the matter. Why offer a half-assed game share experience rather than commit to it or scrap it? Overall, I can't recommend Jamboree TV at its MSRP of $80 USD. To Nintendo's credit, they have done some course correcting, like patching 1080p support for handheld mode into the base game, and offering new physical copies for $60 during their Mario Day sale, which is a steal when you consider that Super Mario Party Jamboree by itself easily justifies that price tag. My verdict is, don't pick up the physical copy unless you already own a compatible camera and A, have young children, or B, are a very casual gamer who loves when games get quirky. But if you already have the game, or you buy a pre-owned Switch 1 copy to break even on the upgrade pack, then you may find the improvements made to the core Mario Party experience to be worth it. The most recent Nintendo Switch 2 Edition re-release, Meetup in Bellabel Park, appears to suffer from the same issues as Jamboree TV at first glance, an upgrade consisting primarily of extra casual multiplayer modes, attempting to make up for a lack of improvements to the core experience. However, Super Mario Bros. Wonder's answer to the Jamboree TV dilemma is simply to double over the main campaign. The title screen allows players to either boot into the original Switch game, retaining its original quality and contents to allow for crossplay with Switch 1 players, or the Nintendo Switch 2 Edition, which includes new content and performance improvements at the cost of a smaller online player base. Perhaps Jamboree TV's odd implementation was a result of online crossplay being broken by the new or altered content. And though the solution for Super Mario Bros. Wonder is more elegant, I was concerned that Simple Online, as the Switch 2 Edition dubs it, would take a hit due to the lesser player count. Thankfully, Simple Online is better than it's ever been, and as the sole defender of the online multiplayer in Super Mario Bros. Wonder, I couldn't be happier. When booting the game for the first time on Switch 2, you're presented with a notification describing the Ghost player system of Simple Online, and a choice to enable the option, bypassing the need to seek out Professor Connect in-game. Courses have also been reworked to allow for up to 12 Ghost players, up from 4 in the original game. Granted, with that smaller player count, I was getting closer to 6 players per course, but that's still a noticeable improvement. I do have to admit that the connection wasn't as stable, as I had to visit the main menu a couple of times and restart the system at least once to reconnect. But otherwise, the online functionality is just as easy and beneficial as in the base game. My only gripe with the online in the Switch 2 Edition is that the minigames introduced in Bellabel Park do not allow for random online encounters, instead requiring couch co-op or game rooms in one half of the park and game rooms exclusively in the other half. The local multiplayer plaza is a genuine treat, pulling from some of Nintendo's best cooperative and competitive experiences like Nintendo Land, the Boost mode in New Super Mario Bros. U, and even Smash to an extent. There's even a tour of the attractions in this plaza, just like Nintendo Land, so I don't have to worry about choice paralysis. The only issue is that I seem to be the only one in my household who feels this way about Bellabel Park, as my girlfriend and brother, who I forced to play multiplayer games with me, weren't exactly wowed by the new content. That's just one reason the lack of online matchmaking stings, but it's especially egregious to not have that option for Game Room Plaza, the other half of Bellabel Park focused on minigames that require each player to have their own screen. There's also no way to create a game room via GameShare, local or online, so the only way I could review this portion of the game is if I bought a second $80 copy of Wonder for Switch 2. I'd be more pissed if not for the fact that, besides Phantotag returning from local multiplayer plaza, the only thing to do in game rooms is about a half dozen racing modes taking place in practically unaltered courses from the main game, which is a feature that was already in the base game, albeit only supporting the base moveset. Thankfully, Bellabel Park is more expansive than the handful of multiplayer minigames it's advertised for. This expansion is a love letter to fans of Super Mario Galaxy, and not just the first game either. Rosalina is playable of course, but we also see co-star Luma return from Super Mario Galaxy 2 as an assist character, and Captain Toad, who was in both Galaxy games but became a fleshed out character throughout the Wii U era, plays a major role in its story content. When you first enter Bellabel Park, the player faces off against the Koopalings, who have stolen the Bellabel flowers and retreated to each of the base game's various worlds. What follows is a series of genuinely challenging and creative boss fights integrated into the main campaign, directly addressing one of the base game's biggest complaints. As you beat levels in the main campaign, you'll unlock challenges in the Toad Brigade tent, which remixes courses to add clear conditions like collecting every coin, collecting no coins, defeating every enemy, avoiding enemies, and so on. The challenges in New Super Mario Bros. U, although welcome, did feel like bullshit at points. But the Bellabel Park challenges strike the perfect balance between being difficult and forgiving enough, especially with the curated selection of badges offering just enough leeway. It's genuinely insane just how much single and multiplayer content Nintendo squeezed out of the original game assets. Of course, the main campaign is still phenomenal, but Nintendo managed to breathe new life into the Flower Kingdom beyond upping the resolution. Besides the aforementioned new characters, there are also plenty of minor changes, like the addition of a new assist mode, hidden pixel Florians and cameos from Pikmin, a new power-up, badges combining multiple effects, narration that's fully voiced by the new Talking Flower VA, and Captain Toad's usual encounters being replaced and reworked to explain why he's now in Bellabel Park. Super Mario Bros. Wonder feels like a new game, and looks as good as I thought it did when it first launched on Nintendo Switch. I can't say getting the full $80 game is worth it if you aren't committed to the couch co-op experience, but the new solo content is definitely worth the $20 upgrade if you already own Wonder. Well, that's about all I have to say for this video. If you're a fan of this new format for videos, or if you have suggestions on how I could improve it, then let me know in the comments below. But for now, I've got to get back to playing Build-A-Way Donut Block Maker on my Nintendo Switch 2. Peace.